And in addition to recording this session, just wanted to let you know that it will be viewed for playback. I'll send you the URL in my thank you email, and you'll be able to watch it again or share it with your friends. My name is Christine Dykman. I am a career counselor here at the Monmouth County Workforce Development Office during the day and helping clients to see the light at night. Wow, I'm double duty there. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Today we have a guest speaker, Tony Calabrese, and he is awesome. He's coming to us all the way from Florida. Isn't that awesome? Now, gotta love the Zoom.
I'm really. I'm really in New Jersey. I'm really in New Jersey. You know that.
Oh,
I'm actually in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Was in New Jersey, yeah. I bet you his weather is pretty cool there too. So Tony has been a certified coach for over 13 years now. He was first trained as a life coach by the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, which is the IPEC, in 2009. He has been career coaching for the 5 O'Clock Club since 2011. Tony's worked for the last 11 years with hundreds of clients in career search for those that were outplaced by their companies, to those looking for career change, to those that are re-entering the workforce. So pretty much everyone, right? Everything, every industry. He works with clients in all aspects of the process, from initial assessment and research through targeting opportunities, from initial to the resume, to the interview, to the presentation, to you name it. So he is a master of all of those things. So definitely take a listen to what he has to say, because sometimes when we are in job search, it's very, very hard, challenge after challenge after challenge, to find any opportunity inside those challenges. And he's going to give us some tips today on how to do that. So take it away, Tony.
All right, thank you, Christine, and it's great to be here. Let me start by sharing my screen. There we go. And talking about from challenges to opportunities, and please note that date was when I first did this. It's the same presentation. I ran into a challenge myself this morning. My computer that I just got maybe 3 weeks ago decided to lose all network connections. And I was about in a panic an hour ago. And then I remembered I still have my old computer. I still had the presentation on it. I might not have been in a PowerPoint format, but I had it in a PDF format. And I said, this is a great example to be able to show the participants what can happen. It even happens to the coach. Another thing too, we're going to talk about a number of different topics today. Christine mentioned my background as a life coach who then became a career coach. And many of these principles are from the life coach teachings I learned in 2009 and 10. Do I remember to practice them all every day? No. Do I sometimes fall into habits where I get down on things? Yes. But it was funny in actually reviewing this presentation and preparing it for you, it helped reinforce some thoughts with me. So let's move forward and let me give you an idea of what to talk about. We're going to start out with something called the 7 levels of problem solving. There's actually 7 levels that people feel different events at, and depending on how they choose to view them or work them really has an impact on how they may move forward through a challenge. Then we're going to get into something called the cycle of change, that anytime change happens in your life, you're likely to go through these 4 steps of the cycle of change. There are 5 different ways that one can manage change and conflict, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the concept of inner and outer box. We'll talk a lot about gaps and how you identify them and steps for reconciling them. We're going to talk about a lot about how much of this is about your perspective and some steps and tips on how to go from problems to solutions. So again, as Christine mentioned, it's going to be recorded. I'll be happy to share the slides afterwards. I'll make sure that I provide Christine a PDF copy of them. And again, also too, at the very last slide is my contact information if you ever want to talk about any of these topics further. So talk about the 7 levels of problem solving. Albert Einstein once said that problems
Tony, you are
can't be
stuck
solved.
on. All right. I'm sorry, Tony. You're a little bit delayed, but you're kind of in the middle of those PDFs. Just want to let you know.
All right. All right. Well, Albert Einstein once said that problems can't be solved at the level that they were created at. So you've got to find solutions at a different level of perspective than the problem. So when you see a problem and only look at it as a problem, you're going to think of it and deal with it as a problem. But if you say, gee, what might be a solution to this situation? It's a lot easier to produce solutions. I talked about there being 7 levels of problem solving. And this goes back to my life coaching. There are 7 levels at which people interact on items in their life. They start with level 1, which is the lowest of the levels. And that's called the victim level. That's where you try to ignore the problem. You try to hide from the problem. You hope it goes away, but you don't take any action to address it. Level 2 is the conflict level of problem solving. You are angry. You are emotional. You say to yourself, I'm going to fight my way through this and the heck with anybody else along the way. And while you might get to a solution, what you may also get to is a lot of angst and negative energy with yourself. You also will get to a situation where you may wind up making others around you angry. So you want to try to avoid levels 1 and 2 as much as possible, or if you fall into them, to at least say to yourself, there's got to be a better way. Starting at level 3 starts the better way. Level 3 is kind of what I call the even-tempered level, where you acknowledge there's a problem, you rationalize it, and you try to at least get an early win, an easy solution, something that is going to make you feel better. It may not help to completely solve everything, but it may be, hey, let me at least do this to feel better about myself. Where at level 4, you start saying to yourself, gee, I not only want to create something that works, but I want to also do it for others that may be involved. That becomes a great mindset to start having when you're in job search. I know a number of you have probably been on a number of different presentations, and I would have think by now you would have learned that as much as your search is about yourself, it's also about the skills and the talents you provide for others. So as you're starting to even go through your search or problems, start thinking about what are the skills, what are the types of items, what are the talents you deliver to others. For example, even myself, I always think of when I work with my clients, This is all about them. What is going to work best for them in their search? It's not about what Tony thinks they should be doing for a living and all. It's where are they at now and how do I move them forward? As you get to levels 5, 6, and 7, you're really in the levels where you're talking about really working as a team with others. At level 5, you're looking to be the best you can be at a particular item or topic. You're digging into the problem. You're finding opportunities that'll be there for all involved. You all have gotten to know Christine very well. She's always looking for ways for you all to work well as a group. As you get into the higher levels, I've got to admit, these levels 6 and 7 are more spiritual in nature. They are more of a mindset that, yes, things are going to happen in life, but they're really an opportunity for you to learn, to observe, to experience. That's certainly level 6. And level 7 even goes further and says there's no such thing as problem solutions or winning or losing. It's just that you're there to experience, to play the game. Admittedly, 6 and 7 are not going to be easy for you to think about as job searchers, but I do encourage you to focus your energy as much as you can in levels 3, 4, and 5, where you're both looking to be solution focused, starting to get an understanding how I might get involved with or with helping others, and how what I do works for the betterment of everybody involved in a process.
You know, Tony, that
seven,
is so wonderful that you outlined that and brought that to our attention. I just read the exact same type of thing that you put on those slides regarding those cycles and steps of what you can control, what you can't control, right on LinkedIn today. And another career counselor has that same viewpoint. I think that's very important that if there's more than one person saying that, it's probably a time that you should listen.
Yeah, no, agreed, Christine. And one thing I can pretty much say, if any coach says to you, this is my original material, don't believe them. We absolutely learn from each other. We absolutely didn't create these concepts. And really, it's a building on what we've learned.
Yes, absolutely.
The next few slides, we're going to talk about what happens when you go into change. And I'm going to anticipate a number of you have either gone through this recently, or if you've even been in search for a while, you went through it a while back and you'll continue to go through it. When you're in change, you usually start out with the following. Like, you understand, gee, I may need to make a change. And you're having your hesitancies about moving forward. Think of the cycle of change as a card game. And the card game is starting up and the dealer is shuffling the cards and you're the dealer. You're starting to think about what you're about to do with this next hand. Your thoughts start turning into yourself. You start reevaluating yourself, your values and your beliefs. If, for example, the last 5 hands you lost, you're saying, ideally this time, this is going to be my hand. So you're open to new possibilities. You're figuring a new strategy to play, and you're ready to start anew. Now, with all that comes the fear of the unknown. Oh, gee, I've never looked into this industry before. I've talked about job or career change. Can I do that? How good are my skills for this new industry? And you're willing to take some action. And ideally, if you're doing this in a job search, this is the time you're focusing on your research. focusing on building your network and building your exploring. And that's a good thing. If you, when you first actually go into job search, say, I've got to do something immediately and start just applying for everything you see and all, I would wager for the most part, you're headed for immediate frustration, because it is rare that I hear somebody loses a job, post for everything they see online, and have people ringing their phone off the hook. Why is that? Be variety of reasons. A, it's the process itself. B, it's the reality. They haven't taken the time to get to know themselves and where they are now in their career and what they offer. And they haven't really thought through or really explored, what is it that I'm seeing over and over again that different opportunities are looking for me in terms of me exploring them. So again, when you first go into change, you're going to start with shuffle. Then in any good card game comes the deal, where the cards are starting to be dealt to you. You're starting to look outward, because now not only do you have your cards, but you're also starting to bring other players into your game. And you're also talking with them in terms of dealing cards with them. You're starting to have some new expectations depending on the hands you're being dealt. And you're looking for clarity. You're looking for process. You're looking for support. If you're starting to get some favorable reactions, you're excited. You're anticipating. You have an energy that's high and flowing. You do have a fear that things could go wrong, but you also have a fear, hey, this could be my time. And this is when you're open to taking a lot of action. You're extending your reach out to others, maybe connecting to ones you meet in the networking groups or different leads. And you're saying to yourself, okay, or at least you should be saying to yourself, let me continue to have other plans going, other research going, and be patient. Christine mentioned that I am a trained 5 o'clock club coach. And one of the very big axioms I learned from the 5 o'clock club is, in search, you're always trying to have as many things going as you can, whether that's a different company, different industry, different location for job, different ways of working. In fact, the Get 5 axiom was this: for every 10 things that you'd have going, 4 or 5 might fall away through no fault of your own. So as long as you always had as many as you could have going, you always had other things to fall back on. It wasn't like you were putting all your eggs in one basket. And if that fell through, you were devastated and back to step one. Once you go through the dealing phase, you're playing the game. And this is an exciting time. In fact, it can get very, very exciting. If all of a sudden you're the person that has 3 or 4 interviews in the point of, maybe a couple of weeks, you're saying to yourself, what do I do next? How can I find the time to do all of this? And you're saying to yourself, gee, how am I coming across? How am I doing? I hate that answer I gave them in that interview. And you almost start sabotaging yourself, as opposed to saying, gee, if I get that question again, I think I would answer it somewhat differently. I might rephrase it a bit or use a better example. And also, too, realizing as long as they're talking to you, you have the ability to continue to do communication with a company. That's what those thank you letters are for. That's what those follow-up is for. They're all about showing them your interest in a position, and that you may even want to phrase to them, I've given some thought to our conversation, and this is something else I realized that I've done in the past or I bring to the table. Certainly, you may have feelings of fear and inadequacy. Certainly, you may also have different levels of excitement. That'll depend on how your search is going. but you get also a sense of fulfillment and peace. And your level of taking action really will depend on your energy, your support, the progress, and how well things are working for you. And nothing says you can't take a step back and replan your strategy on how you might handle, say, the interview or the exploration process.
Tony, let me ask you, you talked about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 so far. Before you go a little bit further, how can we as job seekers prevent that self-doubt, the comparing to others? Well, this person is doing this and this person is doing that, and I should be here and I should be doing that. And I think that's part of the challenges that many job seekers face. So what do you recommend?
Okay.
Or did I go too far? I'm sorry.
No. You did not. In fact, I think your question's excellent, Christine. I know it's going to be, I know what I'm going to say. I know it can be easy to say, but let me put it to you from the perspective of even how I do things as a coach. If you've done enough preparation up front to really get to know yourself, you really need to get an understanding of, gee, this is what works for me. This is what I want. This is what I deliver. And I'll use myself as an example as a coach. You mentioned the things I work with folks on. I work with them. Basically, I love the term strategy, job search strategy. And all the components you mentioned that I work with made me realize that my coaching career-wise was going to help people in their strategy to move their search forward. There are a number of people who do what I do. For example, Alex Freund, who's a good friend of mine and a really top-notch coach, is the master of the interview. He is really somebody who, if you're a high-level executive, you should be working with, especially as you're getting closer to that point of job thing. Paul Skahala really is about the buddy system and the partnering. And Paul has also tended to work well with also individuals at college age, because he's been at the university level. The key being, it's the knowing yourself. And in knowing yourself, you may have to say, this is what, even in my discipline or my strategy, where I'm going to put my efforts, and it's not maybe where somebody else did, but that is okay. In fact, one of the things that I've also learned in being my own entrepreneur is that sometimes people who do the same things as you are some of the greatest people to be connected with, because their niche, their specialty may not be the same as you. Yet
can you say that
people.
again? I love that you just said that. They're not competition. Okay. They are working with you, right? And helping to boost you up. Say that again.
Exactly. That the people that you may do the same thing as are many times your collaborators. Yeah. They may know others in the disciplines that you're in, or they may know of people who are looking for your skill set, and they realize they're not the right person for it, but they would be more than happy to recommend you because you specialize in that thing, that particular topic. In fact, that's one of the other fears to get past, which is, gee, if I start focusing this and be specific, that I will actually lose out on opportunities. And it's really counterintuitive. It's the more you can focus on what you are about and what you deliver, the more people are able to connect with you. Yes. So hopefully that answers it.
Thank you.
Finishing up our card game, you are going to have times where things are going to not go the way you thought. And you're going to toss in the cards on that opportunity. You may even have your day or two of, why me? I just can't deal with this, whatever. And again, the coach can tell you he has gone through some of this even in his own life in the month of May in a variety of scenarios. He had a computer that crapped out on him in early May that he had to get another one. He, like I said, an hour before this presentation was, how was he going to deliver it and all? But ultimately, you work yourself through it. You say, okay, I'll give myself that day or two to maybe walk away, but then you're going to go back to the shuffle stage and say, okay, where can I start my level of energy next? All right, that's the card game analogy. When you get into a conflict or change situation, there are 5 ways you can react to it. One of them is remain to it. You feel I don't have any control at all of this. I'm powerless. It's, why me, whatever. And you're fighting yourself, others, everything in all in anger. This is not the ideal way to deal with conflict. Another way to really not deal with conflict is to try to avoid it. You tend to, when anytime you see something going wrong, you say, oh, gee, let me solve this problem now. Let me, be able to moan and groan about this to everybody I meet. And what you may need to really do is pick your battles. Figure what are the things that are most important to you that you want to work, and let some of the other ones go. What are things that may trigger you? And are there alternative ways that you might respond to that? So notice you're moving from a thing of looking at conflict or problem and always battling it to starting to narrow down again to things that might work for me.
And by the way, if you incorporate all of these suggestions for conflict or change, please keep it in mind. It goes for job search as well as in the workplace. So when you are in the workplace, you can use all of those things, whether it's avoiding the subject and picking your battles or confronting it head on, whatever's going to work for you professionally.
Absolutely. In fact, even though many of these are life coaching type things, remember, work is life. Work is a part of life. And so, yes, these types of things are going to happen in not only the work search, but work life, even if you have your own business, what have you. Sometimes you may need to change the situation. You say to yourself, I'm getting stuck in the same types of things over and over again. And you start to look at things from a problem to, as opposed to a solution perspective. So you may want to say to yourself, what are your perspectives? What are your viewpoints? Are there places that I might want to try? And are there things that frankly I might want to let go of? For example, in even what I'm do with my own business, I may say to myself, gee, this is how I may want to present Tony as a coach. This is how I may want to market myself. This is how I might want to put myself out there. I tend to enjoy marketing myself in my writings, in my doing these presentations, and things like that. I have had solicitations like crazy over the last year about making me $1 million coach. And while that's a nice idea and all, I'm not willing to go through what they're asking me to do or give up on and all. I like the way how I work my business and my process. So you look to fit the situation to you. Hang on a second. You might want to alter your experience of the perspective in, dealing with conflicts. Tend to only accept when you only accept one perspective to the problem, your own, you mean you're leaving yourself resistant to other perspectives and approaches. This is definitely where you're starting to say, gee, maybe I need to open up to other possibilities. So this is when you may just talk to others. You might get their thoughts, their ideas. Not that you're necessarily going to agree with them, not that you're necessarily going to absolutely say, oh, I was wrong or whatever, but you may say, of those ideas, those 5 ideas Christine had for me, 2 or 3 of them, they make sense. I may want to follow up on them and do them. The other 2, they're just not me or whatever. So you're going to look at those perspectives. Even in terms of what I'm presenting you here, if I thought that you're going to want to use and take every idea that I gave you in this presentation, I would be foolish. Some are going to work for you. Some are not. Again.
Please don't. Oh my goodness, your head will be spinning.
and not only,
there's some really good advice here. So take 1, 2, 3, incorporate it into what you are doing to make yourself different or better and reach your ultimate strategic goal. But if you do everything, I will really put Tony on a pedestal.
and not only that, the other thing too being, we're all individuals. Yes. Different approaches work better with different people.
Yes.
And so as a result, it's what works best for you. It's what is going to meet you where you're at. And finally, the last thing is sometimes you just have to accept that certain problems are not going to go away. And so you look to suspend judgment on them. You leave your fear of them alone and move on. In this world of 2022, many a time I have learned that I have to get to this point. And by that, I mean, if I listen to every bit of advice that I hear on the radio, on the television, in the articles, whatever, sometimes I feel I see myself slipping in negative energy. And I said to myself, I will no longer listen to that radio station. I will only listen to the music station that I like, or I may only look at these sites or look at this particular, maybe spectator sport I like or something like that. It's a way, if you feel yourself getting worked up over something, you've got to say to yourself, is it really worth it? Or accept the fact that there are certain things in your life you're going to like and certain things you're not.
I agree, Tony. Sometimes we all wake up on the wrong side of the bed. And with that said, you need to know if you have the mental capacity to do X, Y, Z, or if you just need to call it a half a day before you start to do the things that are needed for your job search, for your advancement personally or professionally.
Okay. One of the early things I learned in my life coaching studies was the concept of inner and outer blocks, energy blocks, things that get in the way. All people are made up of energy. And there's 2 major types of energy that they have. Either catabolic energy, and that's the stuff that drains them, or anabolic energy, and that's the items that really get them going, really charge them up, really make them feel positive about things. When your energy is blocked, it's preventing you from getting to that stuff that makes you move forward, makes you creative, makes you want to move, and accomplish things. So one of the things these next few slides are going to be is helping you to recognize the 5 different types of energy blocks and realizing why they may be holding you back in achieving something you'd want in your life. The 5 blocks are, first, there's one whole category called outer blocks, and we'll explain what an outer block is in a few minutes. But 4 of the blocks are internal to yourself: limiting beliefs, assumptions, interpretations, and the gremlin. And again, over these next few slides, we'll talk about what each of those are. Outer blocks are truly things that are out of your control. For example, economic conditions are an example of an outer block. The price of gas right now is an outer block. You know, they can, these are things that can make you angry. So, you know, what you need to consider is, are they 100% completely out of your control, or are there things you can be doing to address them little by little? For example, if you feel you have a lack of time or time management skills, does that mean maybe you might want to look into a time management course? Maybe you want to read some time management tips, and maybe incorporate a couple of them into your lifestyle. Indeed, you might have financial burdens, and that might be something where you may say to yourself, okay, what things do I have in my life that I really need versus what things maybe I may have put aside for a while. Another outer block is, as much as you might like to think you can affect the actions, words, or behavior of others, you may have to come to the realization that if they're absolutely at that point in their life and that's where they want to be, you can just agree to disagree or share with them, look, this is how I believe, whatever, and this is how I'm going to move forward, and just move on. And then sometimes you're going to find skills and education could be a block. And even there, you may have to say, okay, they're looking for this skill or education in terms of this particular job right now. And you may say to yourself, okay, there's no way I'm going to get that education or skill at this particular time. But maybe it starts saying to you, I develop a plan where I take an initial step now, and yet I move forward with plans in terms of enhancing my education. One of the things I've been doing of late in the last few months is I've been working with a couple of refugee families in Morris County. And one of the gentlemen was an engineer in his country. And when he came to the United States, while he has engineering skills, he can't immediately be considered a professional engineer. He took an initial job in a manufacturing plant and basically was doing work with in AutoCAD, which is in design work. He called me last night, told me he now has an opportunity with a construction company. He's in the process of studying for his functional engineering exam, and he will look to take that in the fall, knowing that if he puts in not only his studies, but about 4 years of time working under a professional engineer, he could apply for the professional engineering exam in the United States. So again, he's a great example of understanding there's certain blocks to him right now, but that he's starting to put together thoughts and a plan of how he may get back to what he was doing in his home country. So again, that's an example of the outer blocks where, frankly, they're there, and you have to try to say, are there ways for me to overcome them, or how far do I really want to invest in terms of my overcoming them?
Good for him. That's awesome. What a great story. I'm so excited for him.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I got the call 9:30 last night. He apologized. I said, no. I said, with that story, I'm glad you called me 9:30 at night to let me know. So anyway, however, many of the blocks are inner blocks. And by that, I mean they are in your thought process. One of them is limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs are your general beliefs about the world, the environment, the situation, and people around you. You're going to find that usually the people who are innovators, say with new technologies, new ways of doing things, who break records and all, are people who have strong resolve to get past a limiting belief. A historic example of this was, for a long time, it was felt that no person could run a mile under 4 minutes. And then in 1954, Roger Bannister disproved that myth. Nowadays, runners are constantly running. In fact, if your miler is running 4-minute miles now, they are way back in the pack. What are some of the ones that might come into the job world? One may be that success for you is all about making money. And certainly while there's a money component in the job, there are folks who are successes in what they do. And it's about the enjoyment they get in the job. It's about the people they help. It's about being seen as the best at what they do. Another one might be that leaders don't show emotion, that leaders are people who have to be stoic and whatever. And we're in an ever-changing environment where more and more you're tending to see leaders now be more involved with their teams, roll up their sleeves, whatever. Sometimes you may say, gee, somebody who's successful has just been very lucky. And there could be an element of luck involved, but what you maybe aren't seeing is the preparation they've put in behind the scenes. Or frankly, and it's funny, Christine and I were talking about this before the presentation, the continual connecting and networking with people who get to know who you are and what you do, so that when an opportunity comes along, you happen to be the right person in the right place at the right time. This is a dated slide, and I know we're a heartbeat away from a woman being elected US president, but there was a time where it was considered something that might never happen. So again, as you have your beliefs, you want to start thinking yourself, is that really true? Or is that what I'm being led to believe by either everything that I believe or everything that's being put forward to me? Are there ways I can get through what's holding me back? Another thing that can hold you back are assumptions. And this one is very straightforward. The assumption is, if you believe that because something happened to you in the past, it's going to happen again. And they're more personal than limiting beliefs. And you're more intimately involved with them. For example, you may say, I've always had to work hard to succeed, so that's always how I'll have to do it. Or in order to succeed, I have to put myself first and the heck with everybody else. Or you may say, I'm not an inspirational person, or any sort of thing. Or you may say, every time I've tried that, this happens or that happens. Again, could it happen again? Yes. But to think ahead of time, it will happen, is really where the block comes, especially if you say, I'm not going to take that course of action because I'm certain that this will happen, this will go wrong and all. So again, the second way you can hold yourself back is assuming that because something happened one way before, it will happen the same way again.
Tony, you didn't get to the other inner blocks, but we did talk about limiting beliefs and assumptions. And if anything that we all learned as a society worldwide, COVID changed a lot of limiting beliefs and a lot of assumptions for all of us. And with that said, they might have changed and they're not part of those blocks. However, think about your limiting beliefs personally or your assumptions personally, and did something else take the place of what was knocked off of that list? So you're always taking that and thinking about society and how your assumptions or limiting beliefs fall into society's own limiting beliefs and how you can make a change.
Yeah. And Christine, I actually have two good real life examples of that. in terms of what I'll call the working and networking world.
Yes.
Networking one first. I am part of a organization for business owners called Business Network International. And prior to 2020, every one of their meetings was in person. It was believed you had a network, meet in person, what have you. And then COVID hit. And to their credit, they had kind of seen the world was changing, but they were able to, within a matter of really a couple of weeks, convert their meetings and the meeting style for their members from in person to online. And they had to do that throughout the world because they truly are in multiple countries. So that was one example.
Yes.
The other one has to do with this world of virtual work. When I started as a 5 o'clock club coach, we would talk about in targeting a job, you want to target what industry you want to work in, what particular functions, and the physical location of the job. And now I open to people the mindset, location can be virtual. And that's not only you looking to work virtual, but that's virtual in the sense that there may be companies in other parts of the United States who will be open to hiring you based on your skill set, that they've passed that barrier saying you must be at their physical location.
That
So-
actually happened here, Tony, in Monmouth County Workforce Development. So you
Yeah.
are absolute. Yep.
Right. Okay, the other two blocks, one of them is the interpretation. And that's believing your particular viewpoint of the situation is the only explanation, that you're not open to anybody else's point of view. When you interpret something, you create your opinion about it. And you might spend a lot of time marching off in a wrong direction. So example of interpretations are, my boss doesn't like me. Now, it might be true, the boss may not like, but it might be the boss has a more different personality than you. Or maybe it's one particular item of the way you're working the boss doesn't like, but they like everything else about you, but you haven't had the conversation with them. Or even with spouses. Spouses sometimes assume that the other spouse will always do something the other way. That's a great way to get into fights with spouse. Just assume that you know exactly what your spouse is going to want to do. Another one might be that people from the East Coast expect things a lot quicker. Therefore, I must get it to them quicker than if they were in a laid back environment. And I'm sure every one of you have your own interpretation thing. We're all guilty of this. And so as a result, how you get past interpretations is frankly using a questioning process. And we're getting this as we go along here. Questioning people as to their beliefs with open-ended questions like what, who, how, when, things like that, getting them talking to see what's on their mind, because sometimes it may open you up to a viewpoint or an awareness that you didn't have before about what they may be thinking. And finally, the last of the blocks is the gremlin. And when I first got introduced to this, I thought about, there was a movie back in the 80s or 90s called Gremlins. And they were these little things that would just try to destroy everything. But
that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, no, I know. I thought about that, but the gremlin is best described as your inner critic. You will find, or many people will find, that the person who beats you up the most in terms of who you are is yourself. It's highly personal. It's what you carry around in yourself emotionally. It's the fears you carry. It's the whispers you say about yourself. You don't want to fail, and so you feel pain and all. And so the gremlin convinces you that since you're going to fail, why don't even try at all? like you're not smart enough to do that job, or you don't deserve great success, or you're not effective. And so in fighting the gremlin, one of the methods that I was taught in class, and I still have it with me, is they let us try to make the gremlin a physical.
That once again, Tony,
You
you
could put
kind
something
of
posted to.
froze.
All right. I said that in my case, I got and others can do it through a posting to their computer. Others can, you can do it through any sort of inanimate object, that it's there visible to you to remind you, don't fall into its spell, that you have control over it. And so as a result, you can be the one to tell it, no, you're not getting me this time. I'm moving forward on my own. So those are the inner and outer blocks. Usually when getting to a point in terms of moving forward, ultimately you need to deal with gaps. Gaps can be seen as something that can be a problem, but I want to give you a thought. When a gap is seen as an opportunity rather than a threat, it becomes a driving force for learning, innovation, progress, creativity, and growth. And let me elaborate on this a bit. Again, I'm not saying any of you are looking to start your own business. Maybe some of you are. But some of the biggest people who have started businesses sought a gap out there and saw it as an opportunity. Think about the way we live today versus the maybe way we lived 10, 15, 20 years ago. We have packages delivered to our door constantly by Amazon. Jeff Bezos saw the gap that people always had to go to stores. We have a World Wide Web. When we had a pandemic, we were still able to communicate. They weren't able to do that in 1918 the way we were in 2020. Again, Bill Gates saw an opportunity for people to connect with each other. And there are hundreds of examples. They don't have to be even, big examples like that. Yesterday, I was in a coffee shop in Springfield, New Jersey. Couple started the business during the pandemic. The police department.
You froze again, Tony. You froze again.
They started I'm sorry, Christine.
That's okay. They started
they started a coffee place during the pandemic, and they are thriving as a business. They basically took the following philosophy. We are going to make this business our life. Where we are is going to be a gathering place for the neighborhood. We encourage people to come in. They want to do their work. They want to meet their buddies, whatever, this and that. They've designed it with a nice open air design and everything. So again, there are opportunities out there, and you got to be open to, gee, how do I fill that gap? A gap, when you really recognize and acknowledge there is a gap, you might have negative emotional responses. That's one of the telltale signs that the gap is unreconciled. That's the threat response. So first, if you feel a threat, say to yourself, okay, wait a minute. There's something here that I've got to address, something I don't like. Then you want to say, what elements, what properties, what are different between what your perception is about what's happening and maybe what somebody else is seeing or what some other people are doing and all? The ones that tend to be the most common gaps are when people talk about the goodness or badness of an idea, a plan, a strategy, or a want. We get into these situations where we get in conflict with each other because we disagree about how things are done. And it doesn't necessarily mean there's a rightness or a wrongness. It may be that your way of doing it meets the needs of one group of clients, and their way of doing it meets the needs of another group of clients. I tend to be very much the way you see me in this presentation. I know I'm probably not the best coach for somebody who is a high-level executive who wants instant answers and wants it now. And I'm fine with that. That's not me. That's not Tony. I mean, if the high-level executive says, hey, I really want to slow down and take this as a process, then I'm their guy. But if they say, gee, I've got to find a job and I've got to find it within a couple of weeks and whatever, I've got to say to them, sorry, there are others who maybe are better suited for you, but that's not Tony, and that's not how he works. When you reconcile a gap, it means you either come to an agreement about something, you learn what needs to be learned, you accept that difference, or you let it go. So when you reconcile a gap, you take the time to explore it. You determine what's the deepest part of it. And most likely that deepest part is going to be at a personal level. And so you've got to decide how you're going to address it in terms of taking care of it. And what you're usually going to find, the best way gaps get reconciled is through communication, powerful communication, two-way communication, communication where you're as much of a listener as opposed to a speaker. In fact, one of the things you will find as you are continuing through your search is keep on working on your listening skills. Be open to listening to others. And we're going to move forward a little bit and talk about listening, because listening is a mindset. There are three different ways people listen, three different levels. They can listen at a systemic level, and that's usually when they're listening with a mindset of judgment. If they listen more at an extrinsic level, they are listening more at what I call an objective or practical mindset. They're not judging, they're not really getting involved, but they're at least open to understanding that others may have different point of views. And finally, when you're hearing at the intrinsic level, you're really connected, you're really feeling, you're really heart-centered. Again,
a way for us to know which way we are listening and to be able to be conscious to change that mindset.
I think that's an excellent lead in, Ms. Dykman. Exactly.
I'm ahead.
No. Exactly. I'm glad you put it that way. Certainly, if you find that you're judging everything you're hearing, that you're saying, gee, I can't do this. Gee, I don't want to do that. That's not going to work, this and that. You really are going to keep yourself stuck. If you open yourself up to at least extrinsic and start being open to possibilities, you're going to be at that more objective or practical mindset. It still may not be your, let's say, focused answer on where you may want to work. It could even be the answer that helps you, let's say, for that cash flow job of the moment. It could be that answer for you that at least gets you back connected and in the game. But to really feel like, gee, what I'm doing is what I love to do. And you're going to want to start saying, what are the things that are really moving me? It doesn't have to be all warm or mushy, but it got to be of a thing of the mindset, gee, I really want to get up on that Saturday morning and go help that volunteer cause. Or, gee, I really want to help that poor person out because, gee, that reminds me of what my parent went through, and I want to help them with this or that type of thing. Or, gee, I went through the same type of thing when I was a student, and I want to help that student out now. So judgmental is going to hold you back. Objective or practical at least gets you in the ball game. Feeling or heart-centered starts to get you more and more tied to the things you love doing. Move on.
You're frozen again. Okay.
Okay. One of the things I also learned when I learned about this subject of gaps is try to become a questioner who, when you ask questions, doesn't ask questions that begin with the word why. And you may say, why is Tony saying that? The gentleman who taught me this, Peter Demarest, said to me, think of this. When people get asked why questions, they usually go on the defensive because usually they take the mindset that somebody is judging their beliefs. You can take any why question and rephrase it beginning into a what question. And what that does, it opens people's mindset to saying, gee, they value my thought process. They value my opinion. They value my viewpoint on it. I'd be happy to share it. And for many of you who may, as part of this job search process, be involved with informational interviews, information gathering sessions, you want to become masters of the open-ended question and particular the what question. It asks you permission to in effect ask questions that sometimes may be hard for the other person to hear. So it even gets the other person to talk. I know I'm doing a great job as a coach. For first of all, I'm always addressing clients in the form of a question. But the biggest thing is when I hear them say back to me, that's a good question, I've gotten them to think. So remember, you want to think of a mindset about speaking your mind once, asking twice, and listening in what we call 3D, systemic, extrinsic, and then ultimately intrinsic.
Can you give us an example of turning a why question into a what question?
Yeah, okay. As opposed to saying, why did you do that this way? You might say, what was the thought process that led you to take these steps in getting the job done this way? So notice you've gone from accusatory to saying, gee, I want to hear your thought process behind it. So that's a good example of one. Or, why would you go to that particular store as opposed to saying, what about that particular business is something that you like? So you get a sense of, of the other person's viewpoint.
Thank you.
Okay. Another word you want to start eliminating or at least minimizing in your vocabulary is should. When you hear or speak a conversation with should or need, determine what happens if you restate it as could, because again, should or need seems to box people in, that I have to do it this way, as opposed to if you say, could it be done in a particular style, or could this be what happened? It again tends to open up perspective, and as a result may get to and address some gaps. And also the other thing too, and I'm not as guilty of this, but I I catch myself with this when I say I have to or I must do something, and try to restate it as it's something that I want to do. Will there be things you have to or must do? Probably. But at the same time, if you think it's that important, it will be truly something you want to do, and want to do because it ideally will help you move a process along.
I love that, Tony.
Thank you. It was fun being trained as a coach, Christine.
I'm sorry.
Learned a lot. No, I
What
learned a
was
lot of.
that?
I said fun to be trained as a coach. There's a lot of
Absolutely.
great things I learned. You know, before I became a coach, I worked in corporate. And in working in corporate, I thought I had to be the person with all the answers.
Yes.
I've learned since that time, I've got to be the person with all the questions. And so I live a more what I call Jeopardy mindset in terms of things, asking questions.
I think that might be a limiting belief too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we're going to move on to perspective. And perspective can be something like the following. Here are some negative perspectives. Problems and conflicts are difficult or troublesome matters that require attention. Situations, feelings, or people that are hard to understand. Tasks that are difficult to accomplish. Struggles or clashes between people. Incompatibilities. Calls to prove or justify something. You would have to admit that pretty much everything on that page is negative. Where if you look at them from a positive perspective, they may be a gap between what are your actual results and your expected results. They might be an opportunity for growth. They might be a natural part of life. They might be illusions. They could be anything you want them to be. For example, Tony will later on today find out why he lost the connection to the network for his on his new computer. He's going to get a perspective. He's going to get it back. He knows there's an answer, but again, it's something to be solved. When things with perspective, you want to combine your answers. You want to look at what your overall outlook is. How is your perspective working for or against you? And again, those things that are working against you, start saying, gee, what are ways that I can adapt them to be more favorable? What would you like to change in your viewpoints? And overall, how do you define problems? Is it helping you or is it hindering you as you're looking to move forward through your search?
I think those are great questions to ask yourself. And a lot of people tend to be negative or self-critical of their own actions. So how do they become that other side? How do they look at a problem as an opportunity, or ask themselves a positive question as opposed to a negative one?
On the next slide, we've got some.
Sorry.
No, this is great. I mean, again, I like the challenge. No, what you want to do is some of the following. First of all, you want to define what is the problem to you. What's the conflict, but what might be the opportunity that you're looking to address? What's the root cause of the problem? What is the thing that's really behind it? You might want to start identifying improvement opportunities. And one of the things that I'm going to start talking about this now, don't look to say, I've got to solve this problem completely. Look to be able to address it step by step by step. And as you make a step that's moving toward addressing the problem, reward yourself, congratulate yourself, saying, okay, I've at least got this step done, or at least this is going to make it better than what it was. For example, in your job search, it might be of a nature where, okay, I took the time to do that, get the resume done, or I took the time to do my elevator pitch, and now I'm working it and I'm practicing it. You are still at a better place than when you started your search and before you had that pitch of explaining who you are. Analyze the feasibility of it. What is possible, and test it. In fact, again, going back to our elevator pitch example, when you design something new, such as build up your or boost up your LinkedIn profile, you write a resume, you adapt the resume for a job description. You might want to connect with the people in this group or other groups or people who are in your discipline and say, how does this sound to you? And if they were to say to you, gee, I don't get it, or I don't think this works well, don't get angry at them. Go back to those what question. You may say to them, I was trying to convey this about my background. What would I have had to say that would have made you get that message? And ideally, first of all, they're going to be willing to still engage you. Secondly, they may even bring up a perspective about you in terms of you as a person who solves problems that you take for granted about yourself, that you don't realize. Gee, you say, I've always done it. It's always been me. That's who I am. And yet it's a skill set others admire because not everybody does it as well as you. Certainly then, once you've started getting some ideas, you look to implement changes. And above other things, measure your results in progress. And measure your results in progress. Doesn't all have to be statistical. Some of it can be emotional. How are you feeling in terms of how you're moving things forward? Are you finding yourself more relaxed? Are you finding yourself, gee, going back to even our example of the cycle of change, am I feeling I'm getting more out of the shuffle and into the deal and play the game stage? Am I feeling more like a person that others are actually coming to help address their problems? So again, you go back through this again, you define the problem, you try to get to the cause, you identify improvement opportunities and realizing there might be several, and look to get some initial solutions, see how feasible your thoughts are, you test the effectiveness, you implement the changes, and you measure the progress.
Hey, Tony, this looks a lot like Project Management 101.
It is, but it's also Life 101.
Absolutely. Everyone asks me, how do you manage your project? I'm like, you do it all the time, every day. Just see it through your day. Right. Absolutely.
Exactly. Now, this is my last slide on contact information. There may be many of you who say, boy, Tony, this was nice to you. This is an awful lot of nice stuff, whatever. But you might want to resist the process. And you may say to yourself, boy, this takes a lot of work. This is too long. It's too cumbersome. Is there a danger I could get so wrapped up in the analysis that I get analysis paralysis? And that can happen if you're not willing to take moves. Please note, during the way, I didn't say analyze, and don't move forward. I did say take steps, get feedback, see results, tweak things like that.
Yes.
And sometimes you may say, I don't need to do all this. I know, why go through this process? I already know the answer, how to do this. And the key question I leave you with is, what amount of rework has been occurring for you in your search because you did not fully identify your situation up front before determining solutions to address it. Did you, just as soon as you started saying, I'm in job search, were you the person who went to every online posting, posted for everything, and now sitting back going, nobody's answering me? That probably, to me, says you probably didn't do thought up front, because while this isn't one of my official slides, one of the things when I learned from Get 5, I look at a job search as a 5-step process. Assessing what it is you want to do, doing some research behind it. And research is talking to people, and also research, online, professional associations, whatever. Starting to get the focus, the target, like I said before, the industries, the types of roles, the location, the various conversations and interviews, both job interviews and even informational interviews, talking about places, and then the continual follow-up. Job search is a process. Life and problems are a process. So again, you can choose to resist the process. And at the same time, like we said before, you're not going to use all of these methods. However, I am sure you're going to be able to pick and choose different things at different times that would be able to work for you. So
Absolutely.
that's my presentation for today. On the slides I'll give Christine. The one thing I will point out right now, it's only one telephone number. I've since, this telephone number, the 973-762-1350, is now out of service, but the 201 is my cell. That works, and so do the other materials. So Christine, I'm going to stop the share and come back.
Okay. Somebody left for another meeting. Are there any questions? I have nothing in the chat box so far. We did take, a few slides. We talked about those challenges, and we all have a lot of those challenges, especially in today's market. But Tony gave us some suggestions on how we can possibly turn those to opportunities and different ways of thinking that they are not so much challenges as they can be thought of as opportunities for you to enhance and make your job search quicker and easier. So I'm hoping that I've got no questions so far. Any parting thoughts for everyone, Tony?
No, again, first and foremost, take your time through the search.
You're frozen.
Also realize you're not searching for right now. You are also searching for the future. And so as a result, whatever you decide to land on now, how does it position you for your next opportunity? So those are things I would say to others. I think Maria asked for my contact. Oh, you're going to, okay, you will share my contact
Yes, I will.
in a follow-up email? Very good, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Eileen. And thank you for your question, Maria. And let's see. Sandy had shared her LinkedIn profile if you'd like to connect with her. And let's see, anything else? It was great to see everyone. I'm glad that you came, and I really, really, really hope that you are able to land in the next week or two. And you're always welcome, but I hope to never see you guys again.
And Christine, thank you for inviting me. It was my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, and appreciate it. Have a wonderful week ahead and enjoy your holiday weekend. And we will have our next guest speaker in June. All right.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Bye now.
Bye.